Hey, everybody, welcome back to Great Mondays Radio. I'm really excited today to introduce our next guest. Before we do, I just wanted to remind everybody, if you are more of a visual person and you prefer to watch your podcasts on video, you can find us on YouTube. Just look for Great Mondays. Okay, so today, Jamey Edwards, who is president and chief strategy officer at Cairns Health, is a sort of a veteran startup leader. He has been around the block and back. He has interacted with some of the most influential VCs in the world. He is building products to help the most vulnerable in the world. And he has just been in and around business for a long time. And what I think we need to discuss, and what I think he's the perfect guy to discuss, is the effect of capital C culture, the kind of what is happening in the world on business and business culture. So, Jamey Edwards, thanks for coming on and being willing to have this, I think, tough conversation.
Yeah, Josh, great to be here. And thank you for having a platform for these tough conversations. I think it's exactly the conversation we need to be having as a humanity right now.
Yeah. So, you before we started recording, you started talking about how much uncertainty and change we're getting, whacked in the face by every single day. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen over your kind of your career and how this is different.
Yeah, Josh, look, I just turned 50 and I'm celebrating my 50th revolution here. And when you take a look at the course of my life and the course of my business life, I think it's largely been stable. There might have been an externality here, even with things like COVID, et cetera. But since COVID, I think the instability has only increased and it's gone exponentially. And we're not only facing what are like radical technological innovations and disruptions from AI in healthcare, where I was, telemedicine, those types of things, which are dramatically changing the shape of how we work. COVID dramatically changed the shape of where we work and the concept of hybrid models. But a lot of people are just wondering what's the next shoe to drop. And we are living now in a, if we'll go to politics really quickly here, in what I would consider the most unstable world environment we've ever had. We had COVID, war in the Ukraine, and now, instability on just a general societal level. I think there was a time where we as Americans identified with the first affinity group of like being American, and now I don't know that that's the case anymore. We've kind of picked sides. And without that unity, it's created a general amount of instability. And I think that has leaked and now infused itself in a broader business culture as well.
Yeah, part of what I'm just thinking about as you're talking, I had this experience early on. I worked with HP on some consulting work, and I was working with the brand group. And one of the stories that the guy who I was working with, who was sort of head of brand, told me was that he had to constantly be battling with the groups inside because they all wanted their own logos. So he showed me the HP tax group. They're like, we want our own logo. And I know the reason why I tell that story is because what I have realized is the larger the organization, the larger the group of people that you're in, the more you want to have some kind of tribe or identity system. And I wonder if, like, what is the catalyst for where the moment where we sort of break apart, right? So it's like we can be neighbors, we can be, I'm a Portlander, or it's like, I don't know, my family's from New York. I like to ride bikes. Like, these are all little groups that we're part of, and that's part of my identity, and that's all well and good. But what is happening now? Because there's this, I guess my point is, there's this sort of natural instinct to want to be able to define ourselves as distinct from, and it defines who we are. But now we're at this place of, like you said, we were Americans first, which means that we can see the humanity in others. What's happened that not, I don't know that you have the answer, but this is the question that your comment is making me think of. What has happened that it's not just, hey, I want to be defined as someone from this state or this location or cares about this thing, but that I am against another thing.
I think you had mentioned it in your preamble here that there's a quest for differentiation. And in that quest for us highlighting what is so different about all of us, we're losing the common thread, right? And if you think about all great cultures, and I've watched a bunch of your podcasts prior to this to get smart on, what you're smart on, Josh. And if you take a look at what unifies great cultures, it's like intention, symbols, commonality. But we've literally spent the last 2 decades talking about why we're all so different. And I
Mm,
don't know that that's been so healthy. Like, why are we not just accepting people for who they are? But for the last 10 years, it's all been about labeling people for who they are. And, yeah, I think community is all about creating that sense of tribe and sense of commonality. And instead of creating a broader community of Americans, instead we've highlighted sub communities. And candidly, I don't know that that's healthy for all of us.
how do we get things back? Like, how do we, become that, the brand leader, right? That I had worked with, where he's saying, you guys, come on, we can't do this. Like, how do we get people to see the common purpose within our organization, or writ large, our communities?
I think it starts with each one of us. I'd like to tell you that there are leaders we can look up to on either side. I don't know that that's the case these days. Um, it's it starts with you and I being kind to each other, and then turning around
Mm.
and paying that kindness forward to somebody else. It's about us being willing to stand up for our ethics and our morals and our integrity and our principles, even when times might dictate that's a really hard thing to do. Um, you know, I think that if I were to ask you today, Josh, like, when in business, we know who the leaders were that we would have followed. We know that Steve Jobs was out there. We know that the leaders of, some people might have said Bezos, some people might have said Musk, right? Because what the guy's accomplished is pretty incredible, regardless of, what's happening now in a political or societal environment. So we knew who the leaders were to follow in business. I don't know today who the leaders of a society are now that we would say, hey, I follow that guy, I respect that guy. That's someone who I really
Yeah.
believe in. I think that's the challenge, is like, who are the leaders we're going to follow, who are going to unify and have the principles that, we all believe in.
Gosh. Yeah. I'm having a hard time racking my brain to think about. It's like we don't have. Yeah. It is a scourge of a lack of leaders. That's crazy that there's not governmental leaders. There's not leadership. There isn't business leadership. I mean, maybe are we just talking about, maybe there is, they're just not as famous, or exposing themselves. Like, maybe there is it just a matter of not having that charismatic leader? I mean, maybe that's still a problem, but is it like there's probably some folks out there that are still, we could still look up to, we just don't know who they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it actually stems from the fact that we've probably lived through this unprecedented time of abundance, right? If you really think about it.
I couldn't agree
And
more.
so
Yeah.
no, everyone was living life in kind of this fair way of like abundance. And, yes, people were struggling, but we were trying to help the people that were struggling. And now, when you had COVID shut down the entire world economy for however long that happened for, like trillions and trillions of dollars. And you had people kind of scrambling for their own, and again struggling to like differentiate themselves, as opposed to, by the way, during COVID, Josh, there was this beautiful moment for me, even though it was a painful moment, where it was like the entire human race against this molecule, right? Against this
Yep.
bacteria, against this virus.
Yep.
And I was like, that actually gave me hope. I was like, this is pretty amazing. Like, we're all talking about fighting the same thing. And then sure enough, it devolved back to kind of the path that we were on before, of like
Yeah.
differentiation and power
Yeah.
struggle and those types of things. And,
It's
I
the
wish I
it's
had
the
a great
China
answer.
it's the China virus. it's Asians, right?
Right,
Right. Which
right.
is so, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, no, this kind of sense of blame, right? Instead of us, all again. I think if you take a look at humanity, people generally want the same things. You want peace, you want prosperity, you want to be your family to be safe. We've lost sight of those commonalities.
Is what I'm putting together in my head as I'm sort of watching the news and looking at all of the reactions from everybody, and then putting in context of all the other exogenous shocks that we've received through our, right? Like, we're two Gen X, elder Gen X guys that have been through a
Right.
few of these kind of tumultuous moments: the dot-com bust, the housing crisis, the COVID, right? You're like, okay, well, now we're back. And it's almost like the uncertainty. You started by saying the other shoe is going to drop. I feel like there are many shoes that are about to come down on us. I just don't know what they are and where they're going to drop. And that is, I think, doing more damage to business and community and opportunity than even COVID did. There was one moment during COVID where someone was said the reason why COVID's so difficult is because there wasn't a, like, during a hurricane or an earthquake, there's a lot, or even the fires, right? The fires in LA.
Yeah,
There was a
yeah,
lot
living
of
through those
trauma,
firsthand.
discrete moment, right? Something happens and then it is over. COVID was something started and then it kind of trailed off. That was more difficult. Now we're in this, like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what's coming over the edge. And I don't know. I'm just going to act scared and hoard my resources, hoard my, abundance, my social capital, and not support. So we are dividing ourselves into smaller and smaller and smaller units.
Yeah, I I think it's a real issue. I would also add in another concept there because I loved what you said about social capital, is this concept of like pseudo-connection that we all have with each other. Like,
Mm,
we have never in the world ever experienced information moving as fast as it could, as fast as it does now. We have never in the world experienced really anyone have a voice the way that they have a voice now, good and bad.
yeah.
Someone who you could really disagree with, who doesn't have a background in or claiming to be an expert in, has a million followers. And we need to be better consumers of information as humanity. And we need to not trade the pseudo connection where we keep track of people over Facebook or over Instagram and think that that's real connection, because it's not. I have made a focus point this year of, like, if someone comes up in my mind and I want to talk to them or I'm thinking about them, I pick up the phone, right? Or I set up a meeting. I am right now starving for like real world
Yeah.
love, kindness, interaction, and connection. Because I think also when you talk about things like COVID came and there was like this pseudo level of underlying chronic stress that we all had. And it's like then technology disruption came, and then we have that chronic underlying stress, and some people not underlying very real stress because they might have lost their job due to some sort of like technological investment that happened, like AI. And now from a societal level, we now have that underlying stress. And I think we need each other more than we ever have. Culture
Mm.
has become more important than ever, but it seems like what we're really lacking is great societal culture right now.
Well, let's bring it back, since this is ostensibly a business related podcast. What can let's just sort of brainstorm. Let's sort of externalize. What can business leaders do to help us move, not solve, but help us move forward, maybe counteract the kind of atomization of the individual?
I think a lot of it has to do with being the change you want to see in the world and being a
Mm,
leader who is willing to stand up for something, right? More than profits, right? We went through a whole exercise with my current business where we're like, hey, like who are we? What are we? Um, who do we want to impact? How do we want to impact them? Like that real mission, vision, values discussion that I think is so fundamental.
Yep.
Every business and every great business culture. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at a lot of companies, like they don't live by their values. And I think it's time we
Believe
all,
me, I know that
yeah,
painfully. Yes.
we all need to live by our values. And I think we need leaders who are willing to live by their values and sacrifice, you know, part of that salary, part of that bonus, or whatever it is for the greater good, and realize
Mm,
that these organizations that we are setting up that allow people to achieve a mission, like that's what really follow. That's what really matters. When I was at Startup Health, um, as the chief platform officer there, one of the things we always said is, look, money follows mission. It's not the other way around.
yeah.
And it seems like in this society, like money has become first instead of mission, and that's how we've kind of lost the thread.
I think you're right. I'm going to build on that. I think we are or have been going through kind of a tug of war between purpose mission driven and like the job of the company is just to return wealth to the shareholders.
Yep.
And we are this shareholder only mentality is, I believe, doing real damage to the long-term value of everything else. There is communal value. I mean, business is so interesting and so powerful because you can measure so much. And capitalism is wonderful in that way.
Yeah.
Except now there is a superseding of capital over everything else. And that to me is when you don't live by values, when you are willing to fold for the sake of, on your morals, on what you believe for the sake of the business, I think we're in a dangerous situation. And many, many organizations are in this place of believing that that's the right thing to do. And we're not.
Josh is on that point, and I bring up this one example. So let's take a look at Meta, right?
Yep.
Or a lot of the Silicon Valley social networks. So why is it that tech entrepreneurs won't let their kids have social media? Why is it that they won't let their pictures be on their own platforms that they're creating? It's for me, there's like a disconnect there. Like, wouldn't it have been amazing for Mark Zuckerberg, who I think at one point was like very focused on the principles of why Facebook was built, to say, you know what, we're not going to allow hate speech. We're not going to allow minors to be taken advantage of on our platforms. And we're going to do everything that we can to make this a
Yeah.
safe community for everybody, regardless of what it means to the advertising dollars coming into the platform. What an amazing statement and example that would have set for everyone. But instead, we've got a guy who built his own bunker in, Hawaii to for when the apocalypse happens,
Fuck
because
all
of the
you.
technology that he
Yeah.
created, right?
Yeah. Right. Right. So, fuck the rest of you.
Right.
Like, it's this individualism. Okay, so here's what I think we've been talking about: individualism versus community.
Yep.
And we have, as a society, as businesses, sacrificed the have slowly but surely eroded the common good, right? The tragedy of the commons. And the government hasn't traditionally the point was for the government to be for the people, by the people, and that has the power, and the direction of that has moved so that we no longer have a backstop. And what we see are this: I'm going to suck as much money and value out of everybody else. Damned be the future, because I'm going to succeed no matter what. And you're right. I think that is a perfect encapsulation, that anecdote about Mark Zuckerberg. Like, there's the moral story. It They could have continued to be just as, I mean, just maybe a maybe $1 billion less valuable. But like, come on, right? Like, how much do you need? So I just I get okay. So let's move it in this direction. Government's no longer the backstop, or maybe national, federal government is no longer the backstop. What role should business play in investing in community, the future, or should it? Should we should we not rely on? We know is it, could you make the case where it's like business has failed? There's no way they can do it. We need to focus on local government or whatever. Focus the energy there.
I think that business can play a really powerful role as long as we have business leaders who are willing to step up and again do the right thing and make that sacrifice, right? I think when you take a look at government, I think if government was really doing its job in the
Yeah,
United States the way
yeah,
it was supposed to, we wouldn't have seen the erosion of the middle class that we've seen. And I think everyone talks about like a great society revolving around a really strong middle class. Well, where is that now? I think we've never been more polarized as a nation between the have and the have nots, and we probably are at this current state of the game. And I think that has begotten us our current society and where we are. And that to me is like sad. So, can business help fix that? I think the answer is yes. If we can help build companies, the next generation of companies with the next generation of technologies are going to employ this next generation of middle class. Like that's what we should be doing. And by the way, I don't think we ever would have said this 2 decades ago, but if you're growing up today, like, man, the trades are super interesting place to be. Being a plumber, being somebody who's helping something fix something very visceral, like I think plumbers and general contractors and people working with their hands have never made more money probably than they are right now. And,
mm.
those jobs are much harder to intermediate than a coding job as it might be today or something of that nature where AI
Yeah,
can step in or a large language model can step in and do some of that work.
yeah.
So it's pretty interesting to see where we are.
It's interesting. I agree that there's definitely, we need to reinvest in middle class development, jobs, and skills. But what you're describing, right? The whole premise of technology displacing lower level jobs, up, so we can do more. Well, have we gotten to the very end of that now, right?
Right.
Like, and now we're
Has,
back at
has
the
the thought economy run its course,
That's
right?
right. Exactly. I mean, it's either, I think it's either, it's like space or, plumbing. I don't know. I mean, it's really kind of interesting because I believe pretty deeply in the evolution of a society based on skills and technologies. I think that's great. It has brought us a lot of prosperity. And yes, there's value creation and value destruction, but ultimately we move in the right direction. So yeah, has the thought economy run its course? That's a wow. I'm going to be thinking on that one for a while.
Right. It used to be that like war was going to be economically fought. I think that's what we're seeing right now in the press. And by the way, I try not to watch the news anymore because I find it like I
Yeah.
don't think the news is the news anymore. There's
No.
no Walter Cronkite like character who's like, I can trust this guy, you know. And I think that's a general issue as well. Is like all the news is biased. It's all editorial. And anyone can tout themselves as a news source these days. So I try not to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. That is tough. Yeah, this has been super, super interesting. I really appreciate it, Jamie. This is, I think a worthwhile discussion. I think it's a tough conversation. And I think I'm walking away from this thinking even more that business leaders need to step up and fill in this role of, future leadership of the future. And I think I loved what you said, this sort of like next generation middle class, the next middle class, the next generation middle class. We haven't lost it. We certainly can build that. And so for those new businesses to create value in a way that isn't just about today's cash, right? This quarter, it's about creating value through, yes, money, through jobs, through skills, through community, through connection. And I think that's one of the roles that culture plays inside of organizations. Can you elevate how people live their lives through business? And I believe that deeply. I've committed my career to that. And so maybe we need culture even more now, right? Like maybe that's really where we need to be.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's like, what's the Tennessee Valley Authority of this generation, right? What is going to put people back to work productively and jobs they can be proud of? And from the standpoint of like where I operate, like I'm very fortunate that I get to operate in healthcare. Like any company that I build has a incredibly intrinsic mission driven purpose and goal because we're taking care of people as part of our business operating model. So
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons why, healthcare is a $4.3 trillion industry in this country and 20% of GDP, is because there are a lot of people that need help. And there's so much friction in the system. And it's so, it kind of evolved over time and almost become too big to fail.
Yeah.
So much to fix that it's like such a ripe area for innovation. So I'm lucky that I get to operate here. But I think a lot of that, from what you said from a cultural standpoint, is yeah, like what can we do? What can you do? What can I do as business leaders to help build this next generation of companies that, have a middle class driven bent to them?
I love this. This was so interesting. Jamey Edwards, President and Chief Strategy Officer at Cairns Health. You can learn more about his work at cairns.ai, CAIRNS.ai. He is also active on LinkedIn, so find him at in/Jamey Edwards. Jamey, super amazing, really, really interesting conversation. Thank you for being a intellectual sparring partner on this. This has been wonderful, and thank you for sharing some of your wisdom that you have gained over your 50 years. I'm 1 year behind you, so Gen X still in the mix. We're still trying to make things better. Not going to give up just yet.
Not yet, not yet. Still
Awesome.
much to do.
Still much to do. Jamey Edwards, thanks for coming on Great Mondays Radio.
Josh, great to be here. Thank you so much.